You have 2 or 3 days where there's a lot of commotion as to who, like you're having it on the Democrat side, who it's going to be. And then that dies down, and it's all about the presidential pick.
Donald Trump last week making the argument that the second name on the presidential ticket, the vice presidential pick, doesn't actually matter, that it will have no effect whatsoever on either campaign. Well, according to an ABC News Ipsos poll taken at the end of July, Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, is the first VP nominee to have a net negative favorability coming right out of his party's convention. Perhaps that sour taste could have something to do with all of this.
There's something comparable, between abortion and slavery.
This is one of the great tricks that I think the sexual revolution pulled on the American populace, which is this idea that these marriages were fundamentally, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. And so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term.
I certainly would like abortion to be illegal nationally. Let's say Roe versus Wade is overruled. And then, every day, George Soros sends a 747 to Columbus to load up disproportionately black women to get them to go have abortions in California. And of course, the left will celebrate this as a victory for diversity.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable, too.
Now, the public is first seeing J.D. Vance for who he is and what he believes. But the thing is, all of those unsavory remarks came out before he was ever picked to run alongside Trump. It was no secret. The Trump campaign should have known of Vance's propensity to say racist, sexist stuff. But they proceeded without caution. And now Trump's running mate is historically unpopular and has been labeled as just plain weird. Now, over the course of American history, presidential candidates have switched their running mates prior to the election just 5 times. In 1864, President Abraham Lincoln swapped his vice president for the Democrat Andrew Johnson. Remember, Lincoln was a Republican. In 1872 and 1896, Presidents Ulysses Grant and Benjamin Harrison both swapped their existing vice presidents out when they ran for second terms. That didn't happen again for almost 50 years when in 1940, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt swapped his VP out for his third run for the presidency. When Roosevelt ran for a 4th time in 1944, he again swapped his VP out, this time for the Missouri Senator Harry Truman, who would ultimately step in as president after Roosevelt's death. But those switches all happened before the party's convention. As we know, the Republican National Convention has come and gone, and the party officially nominated Donald Trump and J.D. Vance to the Republican ticket. So let's just say, hypothetically, Trump decided that he and Vance weren't actually a match made in heaven. Trump could technically still choose a new running mate as long as it happens before state filing deadlines to be on the ballot. Each state's deadline is different, but the earliest deadlines fall at the beginning of September. And it wouldn't be as simple as Trump handpicking someone new and then all of a sudden the lawn signs change. According to the Republican National Committee's rules adopted in 2020, a vacancy of the Republican presidential nominee or their running mate may be filled by the RNC, or the RNC could reconvene a national convention to vote for a replacement. But maybe none of this matters because, as Trump said himself last week, the role of vice president doesn't matter. The other name on the ticket is irrelevant. But the choice for vice president does matter when you're dealing with someone like J.D. Vance, who prioritizes the MAGA movement over the pillars of democracy and is the embodiment of Project 2025. The choice for vice president mattered on January 6, 2021, when Vice President Mike Pence refused orders from the president and ultimately did his job and certified the results of the 2020 presidential election. Things could have ended much differently on January 6th were it not for Mike Pence. That day, the will of the American people was in the hands of the vice president. Keep that in mind when you're voting for an entire ticket this fall. Choose wisely.
Only